updated yesterday or today? Okay. All right, so I'm going to call the meeting of the Washington County Planning and Zoning Committee to order. Meeting will begin with a public hearing. Anyone other than the applicant or their representative wishing to speak must register and submit a registration slip to the zoning administrator at this time. Following the hearing, we're going to conduct our monthly business meeting, at which time we'll vote on the applications. You may stay and hear how the applications are decided, or you may leave following the hearing. The applicant and town board will be sent a copy of tonight's decision. Any other person wishing to receive a copy of the decision can sign a sheet on the table at the front of the room. Those of you wishing immediate knowledge of the outcome of these proceedings may call the county zoning office tomorrow. The procedure we will follow for the hearing for the application is the applicant, their agent, or representative will be asked to present their application, followed by any questions or comments from the committee. Then all correspondence will be read. Then others in favor will have a chance to speak. Anyone objecting will then have a chance to speak. I will then ask for a summary of the committee's field observations and any staff comments. Finally, the applicant will be allowed a chance for short rebuttal if they wish. Anyone wishing to speak should use the microphone, state their name, and direct their comments to the committee. I ask that all testimony be kept brief, no more than 5 minutes, and to the point. If you are testifying as a nearby landowner, please tell us where your property is located relative to the subject property. Tonight's hearing will be recorded, and the recording will become part of the record. Comments that are based on hearsay or secondhand information, as well as slanderous or prejudicial remarks, will be ruled out of order. The committee has looked at all the properties, and the record will reflect these observations. Any person affected by an administrative decision of this committee has 10 days from the filing of tonight's decision to make an appeal to circuit court. The county assumes no liability and makes no warranty as to the legality of any construction commenced prior to the expiration of the 10-day period. Now, introduce the committee. On the end, we have Pat King. Then we have Mike Kapp, Jerry Lauer. This is Cindy Rettler. She's our acting secretary. Todd Waller, and I'm the chairman, George Peterman. All right, so tonight's application, we just have one. It's a conditional use from the Topsail Beach North LLC, care of Mark Bickford, has made an application for conditional use in accordance with section 58-903, paragraph 3 of the Washington County Zoning Code for filling and grading in excess of 10,000 square feet within a shoreland area. The location, an approximate 1.7 acre parcel of land known as Lake Huron Assessor's Plat Number 1, Lot 3, being part of Section 22, T20N, R9E, Town of Oasis, Lake Huron, N5949 East Huron Shore Road. All right, and if we could have the applicant come on up. If you could just state your name and tell us a bit about the application, please, for the record.
I'm Mark Bickford, and my brother and I, Matt, are the owners, and our wives are the owners of Topsail Beach North LLC. We purchased this property, about 1.5 years ago, thinking that we could make something that was really bad be good. And I think if you saw the pictures, you will know it was a challenge. But we thought what had happened was that we had a place on the north of the lake, and it was fairly steep. And my wife had gotten cancer, and we found she couldn't walk up the steps because they were so steep. So we tried to find some place on the lake that was more gentle. And so this one, we decided it's a job, but we will try. So that's ultimately what you came upon now. And when we got there, we started trying to get our plans in order, and I'll be the first to tell you, I thought we had every permit we needed. We got the demolition permit, we got the construction permit, but when we had to disturb soil, we had to take out, we had at least we had an old outhouse, we had an old camper that was grown in, we had one of those barn-like outbuildings that people buy that's a little larger, that the people had used for their own. That was their first level, I think, of a cottage that they were using in there, because it was all, it had kind of like plumbing and those kinds of things in. Well, that one, we had to remove that as well. And then the concrete, we had hoped initially, we thought maybe we could save that basement, because everybody talked about it along the lake, that was the bunker house. Well, when we took our contractor in, he said, Mark, there's a lot of things to like about this, but there's a lot of things not to like about it. He said the footings weren't right. He said that it was sagging where the windows were in it. It had too many windows in the basement. And so it was like, I don't want to put a bunch of money into it and have it, the base part of it, be bad. And the other thing the person had done is they made a choice and put some cement walls in the basement. They were big and thick, and you were then locked into these walls that weren't quite high enough, and you didn't really fit where you would have them to have particular rooms. So we grit our teeth and decided, okay, we'll tear that out. So we had that torn out. Then that had a septic system that had been hooked to it that I don't think was ever used. So we did pump the septic out because the county asked us to do that, but it had never been, as far as we knew, hooked up or used. It just sat there for many, many years. Well, that was another thing that we had to disturb the soil, because here was another tank that we had to take out. Well, then when we got the house established where it was going to be, then they said, our builders and the plumber said, no, you really need to go uphill and pump that up to a drain field up the hill. So we were back to more disturbing of soil, because we not only had our tanks down below the hill, but then we had to go up the hill to put in the drain field. So all these different things we thought we were perfectly okay to do, and then we found out that really there was a 12,000-foot limit on how much soil we could disturb. Now, I don't know if we could have ever even gotten, I don't know if we were behind the 8 ball before we even started with 12,000 square feet, because it was such a huge job to do with all the different things that came around to having to be done. But we've done our best, and when we got pretty well everything ready to go, then we got into a holding pattern during this summer, and we were trying to get in the electric, and what had happened was the person before us let the electric service lapse, so we couldn't just get an electric, have them hook up the electric. We had to run a whole new service for that. Then the people on the next house over, they had been frustrated because they wouldn't let the phone line run down the road, because this person wouldn't sign an easement, so they couldn't get internet access. So we were trying to then coordinate that internet person there, and then we had to get the well person in to drill the well, and then the septic person to get in and get the septic tank in. And then one of the people that's here is Dave Bacon, who was our excavator, and Dave was the one who did almost all of the soil moving, and he was anxiously waiting for all these things to take place so we could quickly get our the dirt and then back in place, and then put vegetation on it and get things stabilized. And the issue that we ended up having was, a couple times, no doubt we had a lot of vegetation that was gone at this point because of all these different things. And Dave will tell you that it didn't seem like we could take a scoop of dirt out of there without getting an old drain tile, without getting an old wire, without getting a piece of concrete, without getting an old piece of metal from something this fella had collected. But it was everything. And I think the pictures, if you could see, we couldn't turn over anything without coming up with something. It was like every time you you peeled an onion, you had another layer. So we kept going after it, and eventually got it to the point where we think it's pretty reasonable. So then but what had happened was, then we had a couple of those big rains, and it washed some pretty good gullies alongside of our new house, and we were pretty concerned about it, but we couldn't do anything while we were waiting for all these other things to coordinate together. So Dave was anxious, and as quick as all those services got in, Dave quickly got in there, put all the dirt around, put seed blanket all over everything, and that's where we're sitting right now. And I believe that County was, the workers that came out said, they told Dave, you did a great job covering it all up, and we think that we've got our issues resolved for now with respect to any water. But our plan in the long run is, first we got to get the grass established and make sure that that's growing. And then once we do that, you guys were out there, you saw, I don't have any desire to mow those hills. We want to get those with vegetation that stabilizes all of that. But I suspect we'll put in lilacs and in bushes and shrubs that are more low-lying and wildflowers, just because we'd like it to look pleasing to us and not really be high maintenance. And my wife loves doing those kind of things. You can go behind our house and see the butterfly garden, because that's the kind of stuff that she likes to do. But anyway, so that's what our hope is to get it pretty much the hillsides revegetated, but first get the grass, and we're hoping that now that we've got water, we can irrigate this summer. It seemed like it was last year, it was one of those, it'd rain a lot, all of a sudden then the next thing you know, you need to be irrigating. So we're hoping that now that we've got a pump and a well and those things, that we can irrigate up the sides to give water to everything and get all the vegetation established so we can get everything in order. And that's our goal, and we're hoping to, we want a nice place. I think if anybody has any question about our intentions, they could certainly look at our other one. We had that 5 years, and I think we were known on the lake as having a very nice place and taking care of it, and always being, on top of keeping our stuff up to speed, not letting things deteriorate. That's why this one was such a project, because I think it had maybe 35 or 40 years worth of letting it go, and then they'd be a little bit, and then letting it go. So in any event, we tackled the project, and I think if you saw those pictures and you went out there, you know what a project we had. And we've done our best, and we're certainly intend to keep doing our best to stabilize the hillside and to make this a nice place. We like Lake Huron, and we want Lake Huron to be a nice lake. So we have no intention of doing anything that would, in our mind, harm the lake. So we're going to try to get everything growing back not the way it was, I don't want to say that, growing back with some orderly fashion with vegetation, and that's our hope and our goal. And if you have any questions, I'm here. My brother's here, his wife is here, my brother's name is Matt, and Dave Bacon is here, who was the construction person who did all the excavating there and is well familiar with what he ran into and what he found. So in any event, that's where we're at with it right now.
Thank you. So do any of the committee members have any questions for Mr. Bickford?
What side of the lake are you on?
I try to tell people we're on the east side, and it's about like maybe 2 o'clock. In that you can't no, you have to get through. They found out the hard way. You have to get through it by going across that road that goes across those people's yard. That house, and I think like 80 acres there, is owned by a person who has one of the lots on the lake. But anyway, so that's how you get in through it. Yeah, I wish I had access to get to his place, because that'd be a lot nicer and shorter, but that isn't the way the lake is set up.
Any other questions? I guess if we saw that we had such an issue, then I would, I would assume that would take permits and things to do.
Yes.
If it's not our intention now, but Dave, you thought so far we could get by without that, right?
Right. I didn't see really need to, but I guess could be an option if we had to, but I don't think we need to have any end at this point.
It just seems like we're down at the very bottom where your garage is, and it's like
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we don't really use it in that much in that season normally. We're just trying to figure out how to basically monitor it, for your furnace and all those things during the winter. So I'm assuming we'll have to get some internet on there to be able to keep track of it. But anyway, any questions anybody has? I tried to give you as many pictures and show you what we tried to do.
And just to summarize a little bit, so this, being at this point with the the soil movement and the excavating and everything, that wasn't your original intent, it was just a bunch of dominoes that kept falling.
Yeah, that kept falling. All of a sudden, we were hoping to save the basement.
Yeah,
But it was pretty deflating when the builder says you're putting lipstick on a pig, and you're going, oh God, because that immediately jumped the price tag. I mean, and then he said not only does it jump the price tag, but try to find somebody to pour a basement. He said that was like finding hen's teeth, was to find a contractor that you could get to do cement.
sure.
I mean, I don't know if that's what your experience has been, but that's what he told me. It was not easy to find.
And then the sort of plan to reseed, you know, with the different wildflowers and plants and everything, is this something that you're doing on your own through research, or are you getting professional advice on what would be best?
All the other time, on our other one, we essentially we didn't hire a professional. We just put in, like, my brother doesn't live too far from there, and he's got 100 and some acres, and so he's got all kinds of tiger lilies and wild things that we could transplant from there to there. And so our thought was to mostly transplant.
Okay.
If we had to get somebody professional in, we could. But some of that is like that domino thing.
Right.
If we get the stuff in and it all goes good and it's growing well, which I have every reason to believe it will, because on the other side, we put in a lot of lilacs, and those things seem to take off. I mean, they did well, so I'm hoping that those will do well there as well.
And then the last question I had, and it was just something we were discussing after we got done meeting, and maybe Dave could be a better person to answer. But there was some concern, and I know that we broached the question a little bit with you there, of water washing down into the garage area. You know, what kind of risk are we looking at that, you know, a good rain could?
Washington, I mean, right now, it's actually kind of pitched to
I was looking at the,
come a little bit to the south, kind of to the little east and then to the south and kind of south around the garage.
right,
And so, and right now, we're trying to eliminate most of the water coming down the hillside by putting that swale on top and that berm on there. And actually, the north where that roadway is going down was actually all original, that was originally always in there. We actually just put gravel over top of it. That was the original going down into that base. So, I mean, there's gonna be some watching just on it, but I'm feeling that we can keep the water. If we have to, we'll put a kind of a rock waterway there, just south of the, kind of the driveway area that helps slow down the water before it goes down around that way.
and this would represent the
Yep.
flow. So we got this in our packet, so.
Yeah, and that's what he prepared.
Okay,
And Mark, one thing too I'd like to offer is just the assistance of the county. My land conservation guys, you know, our professionals trained in this. We do have lists of plant materials that are indigenous to the areas, that are, you know, common for shoreland type properties. Plants that really anchor, you know, the soil in place.
Well, I'll certainly be happy to
Yep,
talk to them.
and they're wild grasses and things, wild flowers and things like that. But, you know, the problem that I think that a lot of people have is that when you go and you plant, a lot of people think Kentucky bluegrass, oh, it's gonna anchor that soil. That has a root structure that's about that deep. Whereas, you know, wild grasses and wild flowers, what you see above ground, typically you see that's the root structure below ground, and that's the type of thing that really anchors, you know, your soil in place. So I definitely offer our assistance. Please, it's no charge. Come in and we'll help you out.
Oh, absolutely. We want to get that covered, and like I said, I don't want to be mowing that. I don't want to be that guy trying to do that. So I want it to be natural grass, and to be honest with you, it seems like that's what all the insects and the butterflies and everything else, that's what they like. So I'd prefer to have that.
Exactly.
all right. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any correspondence?
We haven't received any correspondence to date. I would like to point out, though, that given the fact that it is a shoreland property, falls within 300 feet of ordinary high water mark, we are required, if over 10,000 square feet, to contact the Department of Natural Resources. We have sent all the materials to the Department of Natural Resources for their comment. We have not received anything to date, which typically we don't receive any comment if they're in favor of it.
And is anyone registered to speak in favor?
We have nobody to speak in favor or against, but I do have one registration from Herb Zotke to speak for informational only.
Thank you. I brought all my friends with me here tonight, as you can see. First of all, I want to challenge a few of the statements that Mr. Bickford made in his comments here. I don't think he adequately described the truly nightmarish conditions of the place that they got. Oh, my God. Well, you know, see, well, we are the first lot south of that, so that would be like 125 feet or something like that. But actually, our first cottage was down there by the boat launch, and we could see this bunker since 1980, and it sat untouched with no roof on it. And then for like 20 years, and then they tried to put a roof on it, and when they made the ridge, it was like a foot off, so they just put tar paper over that like foot gap and everything. And I mean, the place was truly horrid. You didn't even want to walk by it. You know, you said there's outhouses and old trailers, and everything is filthy and moldy and everything. So God, thank you. Thank you for getting rid of that mess, and also thank you for buying it, because I walked by it a couple times and I thought, gee, maybe a guy could get a deal on this. And I started looking at all of the challenges over there and what you went through, and I want to thank you for relieving me of that, you know. So I guess really what brings me here tonight is that I had gotten from Cindy, I believe, a copy of the remediation, or whatever you want to call the plan, and it was very short. And, oh, yeah, you know, I have experience with this peculiar kind of soil. Like I say, I built 2 houses around here. And, you know, the first one was over by the boat launch. There was absolutely no horizontal land on the property. And so we were faced with a very similar situation over there. And, well, the way we handled it was with retaining walls to we built like 2 retaining walls over there to divert the water and to stabilize the hill. And I could tell after we put those retaining walls in that the hill actually dried up over there. Now, in the meantime, I got to tell you that I was watching that hill I mean, the thing was sliding. You could actually see on the first property that the whole thing was going down there like that. There was a hump that was actually moving down towards the lake because of the liquefaction that we were talking about. I have people that come back to get lost, or they're sightseeing or something, and they go back on my road back there because there's like 1,000 feet or something like that of gravel, you know, sand and gravel, and someone gets stuck there every year with 4-wheel drive. It's like quicksand, it really is. So I guess that's my concern. I did not see, like what you're talking about, you were going to resod it with Kentucky bluegrass, and it's like you were explaining, it has a very shallow root zone. And I made my living, as believe it or not, as a firefighter in Milwaukee. I'm retired now, but through the years I've been an avid but an amateur botanist. And my wife, who declined to come with me tonight also, is a landscape architect. She works for Milwaukee County. And we both have interests in natural landscaping and everything. And, for instance, the property, we have Chainsaw. Everybody knows Chainsaw George. You know, at the end of the road over there, you used to work at the Trading Post and rental center and everything. I bought his old place over there. And for one reason or another, the hill over on our property has never been disturbed. And as a botanist, I can tell you that's a very exciting thing for me, because we have a very excellent selection of native plants, stuff that has always grown there since the last ice age. If you wanted to come and take a look at what's growing over there, and we would certainly be glad to render our assistance and waive all of our normally really expensive consulting fees, you know. So I guess at this time, you know, like I say, I watched this whole thing happen, because I come up once or twice, well, probably 1 or 2 days a week I spend up here, and I putt around and I pretend that I'm working, and I'm really kind of loafing sometimes. But it gave me the opportunity to watch what was going on over there. And I'm going, oh, God, I hope, you know, because I could see the whole thing kind of taking the progress that you had mentioned over there. So it is my feeling that I think they're on the right track over there, and if I could, I would recommend their project, as long as, one recommendation that I could make is that instead of just wildflowers and things like that, what you need is something with a canopy, with a cover, in the event of a heavy rainfall, something that'll stop the speed of the raindrop, you see, because a raindrop, it gets going pretty fast. They're streamlined, they hit the ground, and there's a big, water's tough stuff, and so there's a big impact. So, a nice mixture of strategically placed, white and red pines, red oaks and hickories and things like that. Not ash trees anymore, I guess, that those things would be helpful. But it looks to me like they're on the right course over here, so.
Well, thank you.
Did I use my 5 minutes? Probably.
I think you did. I think you hit it right on the head. All right, staff comments?
Okay. As indicated in the staff report you have before you, the applicant, Mark Bickford, on behalf of Topsail Beach North, is requesting a conditional use from the Washira County Zoning Code for filling for filling and grading in excess of 10,000 square feet within a shoreland area of the town of Oasis. Earlier this year, the applicant did receive land use, building, and sanitary permits for the construction of a one-story, three-bedroom, single-family home with a walkout lower level upon the aforementioned property. As stated, the existing home and the vast majority of the accessory structures, county maintained no records. Obviously, those have since been raised to accommodate the new construction. Now, at the time that the applicant did submit a building permit, the applicant did also submit an erosion control plan. However, per that plan, the proposed disturbance area was approximately 10 to 15 feet around the perimeter of the new home, or approximately 4,000 to 6,000 square feet area. It wasn't until later that year, I think it was back in October, that staff was out performing an on-site on another property on the lake when we had noticed a considerable amount of clearing and grading that was observed at this site. Upon utilizing both on-sites and aerials, it was ultimately determined that over 36,000 square feet was clear-cut, graded, and/or filled. Obviously, upon initial concern of ours was the fact of the vulnerability of the property to erosion, and especially given some very severe cuts into a couple of the hills. In the staff report, or in your packet, you also have pictures that kind of replicate, or I should say depict, some of the concerns that we had. You could see exposed root structures to several of the trees along that hillside. Land Conservation and Zoning staff has since met with the applicant and the contractors to discuss the need not only for conditional use, but also measures that can be taken to stabilize the hillside and the property. Back in November, we revisited the property and noted that considerable work had been done, and staff felt that improvements far exceeded our expectations and our original expectations. All slopes were graded to 3-to-1 or flatter, and all areas have been seeded, and actually erosion control blankets and diversion berms were installed at the top of the slope to prevent water from flowing downhill. As the county maintains no ordinances or codes pertaining to the removal of trees for shoreland properties beyond the 35-foot landscape buffer, nor any specific stormwater management requirements for properties outside of the impervious surface requirements, we are required to inspect properties for erosion control, as well as notify the Department of Natural Resources. As indicated, and as I've stated, we have contacted the DNR, have received no comments. Now, the committee did visit the property at the recent on-site on Wednesday. The committee's only concern at that time was over erosion control, as we've stated. While the site appears to have met the county's minimum standards, there was concern over the potential for future erosion on the upper half of the site, and whether this may be an ongoing monitoring situation for the homeowner. Staff has reviewed the request and believes the applicant and the contractor have gone far above and beyond our initial request, and since the county maintains no standards to stabilize the property, and we also believe that they've gone to great lengths to clean up the site. Once vegetation is established, we do not believe the improvements should negatively impact the surrounding properties and/or land uses. While the committee will be making a formal recommendation on this request later this evening, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use, as stated in the report you have before you, subject to several conditions.
Mark, this would be your chance for any rebuttal if you think it's necessary. All right, very good. So that then closes the public hearing portion of our meeting, and we'll transition to the business meeting.